Gotham Knights. Let's talk
that's
about
the one. Yeah, that's
old Gotham
we're
Knights.
gonna start from the bottom and then just
Oh
get
my God.
progressively better with the game quality. I'm just gonna say
You're
that
setting
much.
the bar up there, but yeah, so we actually got code for this earlier as well, which I was not expecting. Gotham Knights launched.
Did we though? We just got it like the Friday beforehand.
Yeah, I mean we got it a week early though, which is
like
quite
a weekend.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Gotham Knights launched, I think yesterday, the 21st.
I'm sorry. What is happening with Batgirl here?
Well, what do you mean?
She looks. What fucking suit is this? I haven't seen this shit. What is this? The gear system in effect here?
It's in effect.
This is awful.
There are lots of different outfits, but we will get there. So
okay,
for those
sorry,
of you who
it
don't
just
know,
took me by surprise because I was like, I don't recall this at all.
Oh my God!
Never mind. Gotham Knights.
So for those of you who don't know, Gotham Knights is. It's I almost want to call it a pseudo sequel, but it's not at all tied to the Arkham games. It is made by Warner Brothers Montreal, who made Arkham Origins, I believe. So it's
actually good Arkham game,
a good Arkham
very good
game.
one. Yeah.
So this is a Batman game, and spoiler if you didn't know, Batman's dead. They literally tell you that in the marketing. You see it in the opening cutscene. Like Batman's literally dead.
Yeah, it's not really a secret.
In this, I suppose, take on the Batman world, we're far enough that Batman has obviously trained up his whole cluster of proteges and follow-up heroes. So we've got Batgirl, Red Hood, Robin, and Nightwing ready to.
It's basically 3 Robins and a Batgirl.
3 Robins and a Batgirl. Ready to look after Gotham in the wake of Batman's death, and it's far enough because if you want to like really get into the nitty gritty, I know that Batgirl eventually becomes Oracle at some stage, but this is set after that even where she becomes Oracle and now she recovers and she's Batgirl again. So it's pretty far along if you want to look at.
They actually make mention of like her getting like stuff to help her spine.
Yeah, so it's pretty far along in this take on Gotham. So yeah, in the wake of Batman's death, he's murdered basically, and he has an unsolved case which you and all the other knights need to solve, and that is the window dressing for what is a pretty average.
Where the fuck did that bike come from? Jesus,
it is the window setting for a. Sorry to say, pretty average game. Gotham Knights in early reveals and early gameplay videos, it didn't look good. I think we were both very vocal on we're not sure how this game's going to pan out. But I was always cautiously optimistic because the thing is, some games just don't look good to play until you play them. But having now rolled credits in the game, it doesn't look good to play and it is not great to play. Like it's. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said this game is aggressively average.
It is. Yeah. It is. I mean, this is not a big portion of the game, but the footage that's playing right now is a really good indicator of like what is going on here.
No,
like,
so I'm chasing.
This bike is going maybe 10 kilometers an hour.
Yeah,
but it's got the speed lines from 10 anime fucking bombarding the screen to try and tell you that it's actually
so fast. Yeah, I think we could start there on that. Just the game doesn't feel good. I don't know. It's kind of difficult.
A lot of it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to hit the nail on the head of why exactly. But it just doesn't. So like the Bat Bike is a good starting point where you've got a sandbox Gotham City to explore, and obviously you need to traverse around. And one of the means of getting around is the Bat Bike, which you think, shit, this is Batman's bike. It must be fast as fuck, boy. Must go.
Blitz.
But it doesn't. Like you get on the bike, and as you described, you've got the visual effects of wow. Look at the fast lines, the blur, the music ramps up, but you're barely overtaking cars.
Going so slowly. It's
you
so
like drive
weird.
alongside a car, a kid looks like, oh my God, it's Batgirl. And you're like,
and it's like
barely
so,
overtake.
It's not like a nitpick. It's like so obvious from the first time it happens. I was like, am I not pressing accelerator correctly? Like, is something wrong? It's so weird. Like, and then I think the combat is
yeah,
the
I was going to
strangest
say
part of
that
this
translates
game.
to combat where even that you know the early demos of this game you thought combat doesn't look great, but again maybe it feels better to play, but combat looks sluggish, and let me tell you, it feels sluggish as well.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that they're trying to emphasize, you know, combat's brutal and heavy. Like there's, I think they're trying to convey a weight to all the blows, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I don't know if I compare it to. So I never played Arkham Knight, but I've played Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. I played a bit of Arkham
It's
Origins.
not that.
But
it's super not
you know that combat's fast, but you can still feel the weight. Like, oh my god, Batman's giving a beat down on these guys, and he's fluid. You know, the combat, it just feels so like slow and heavy, and it doesn't like not in a good way. Not in a good way at all.
It feels so unresponsive.
Yeah.
It just feels like I'm waiting a really strange amount of time between pressing a button and an action taking place. And even then, the animation feels like it's playing out super slowly with regards to how I would expect action combat to happen. So like, you know, it's not even a fair comparison. So like the Arkham games have a completely different combat system. So I don't even think comparing them, like they're just different.
It's not, it's not fair, but yeah.
Yeah, they're trying different things. But if this game was going for something like weighty, you can look at something like Elden Ring and be like, that's weighty, but it's responsive. It feels like when I press a button, something happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or at least there's a predictability to what is happening. Like if I've got a massive sword, then I know, cool, it's going to have a long wind up. Here it's like, you press square for Batgirl to swing her nightstick. And it just takes an inordinate amount of time to like actually connect with someone.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the enemy attacks. They just feel like they're going through molasses the entire time. It's so weird.
But even on that front, so what they try to do, oh my god, the scene playing out, if you're a video viewer, this is a ridiculous mission.
Clayface
with enemies as well. What they try to do is add variation of, like, you know, a typical action game. It'll be like, oh, this is a hero carrying a shield. You need to do a heavy attack to break their stance, for example. They introduce ideas like that, but it looks good on paper, but they don't execute it properly. It feels awful. Like there are enemies at a later stage where it's like, oh, you need to do a heavy ranged attack to knock them down. But the thing is, like, so imagine 3 of them are fighting you at one time. Okay, so you'll do a heavy range attack, but you only manage to knock one of them down. Then the other 2 line up, you do a heavy range attack to knock them down. But you knock those 2 down, but the one that is knocked down gets up because you damaged him. I'm like, okay. Like I can't get damage on these guys because they're not knocked down and they keep getting up. It just executes it poorly. Like that's just one example of me going, oh my God, this is so frustrating.
Yeah.
And there are many instances of that where you can only do damage to certain enemies if certain conditions are met, or you do certain things to knock them down. And I get it, like it's meant to add variation, but it ends up making combat a chore and, I don't know, just very frustrating in certain instances.
Yeah, so it's a real... I can tell that the idea behind it is like, okay, we can't have the free-flowing combat from an Arkham game because we have this gear system, which is meant to like how do you have that if you have gear that is meant to change the damage attributes and stuff? So it's like, cool, here's this action combat that is meant to take all of that into account, so that fighting single enemies is harder. But then, by all accounts, from what I've heard you and Darren and Jeff say, it's like the gear is so inconsequential to the game that you're hitting and killing enemies with 1 or 2 hits anyway.
Look, I think it depends on what level you are. So like Darren, for example, I know he did a lot of the side content, that by which point when you did main quests, he was doing too much damage. Whereas the other way around, I was trying to mainline the game to, you know, roll credits before this episode. I was underleveled for certain quests, so it meant me having to hit the enemies a lot more. But I think the gear system's problem is that it feels like a Windows setting. It doesn't add value. It's there. You can look at it and be like, oh, cool. But every time you level up, you end up getting new gear anyway. which I found a bit strange because you can craft gear. So there were times I'm like, oh, cool, I leveled up. Oh, I've got a new outfit in my inventory, which has way better stats, but I can also craft something that's very similar. Like, why did I get given something? And then even then it's like, okay, cool. Here's a weapon that does ice damage. Like that's nice to have. But at no point was I going, like let me juggle this gear. I could have a fire damage build, an ice damage build, whatever. It's just I used whatever was strongest at the time. And you get drip fed so much gear anyway. It feels like, why is this here? The only instance that makes sense to me is like if a game has in-game content, like a raid boss or something, where then you can go and min-max and, try get certain builds, whatever. It doesn't fit here. Like, I don't know at any point what is the end-game content here where it's going like, oh, you get to fight this boss, but you need the best gear to do that. So I'm like, well, then what's the point? It's there, but it doesn't add anything to the game. So it's a bit weird. It feels like an afterthought, I guess. It's like one of those things where, modern day games must have light RPG elements and gear because that's what people want. But even that, it's not like I'm fighting enemies and they're dropping items. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm grinding out, oh my God, this Clayface dropped a gold a gold tier batsuit. Wow, amazing. It's not that. There's no dopamine hits when I'm, I don't feel like I'm getting stronger. So
it just feels like a weird
it's a weird
thing to include in a game like this. I never understood the gear inclusion, and it always seemed like the combat was built around the idea of gear, and because the gear system was bad, the combat suffered as a result.
Yeah, with things like that, like I think there's no harm in adding RPG light systems to a game like this, but then there are smarter ways to do it. Like if you said to me, here's a skill tree where you can now learn different combos with each hero. Here's a square, square, square attack. Here's a square, square, square triangle combo. Like that's cool because then you feel like, oh, my hero's progressing. I'm getting stronger. You don't need to tie it to a gear system. But I mean, that's just nitpicking now. Like, games are different and all have different interpretations. But it's just such a pity because I think the world here, like the world of Gotham is interesting. I mean, I know a lot of people love Batman and just this setting with all the different villains and, whatnot. It just feels squandered, which is sad. I don't know. Feels like it's just such wasted potential. If you think of what the Arkham games have done for DC and that franchise as a whole, introduce more. Like, I can tell you, I had a base understanding of Batman from the movies. I've never read the comics, but Arkham Asylum and Arkham City really broadened my knowledge in that, I played the game, got introduced to villains, read a lot of the bios and the lore pieces. Like, damn, I learned about Calendar Man, which I never knew about before. The world is so interesting, but then you get this and it's like, I don't know. It
doesn't
wasted.
Add to that same, even though it's a new universe, like it just doesn't add to the same.
I will say on that front, if you are someone who loves Gotham and that this setting, there are a lot of nice little Easter eggs and lore bits. Like you can go into certain areas and you can read up on, spoiler, the Court of Owls, which is one of the main antagonists in this game. Learn little bits and pieces about them. You can go to certain parts of the map which reference X, Y, and Z, and that's really cool. Like I can't fault them on that. There's definitely those bits in this game if that's what you want from the Batman game. But yeah, it's just.
Do you have to only play as can you just play as one character?
You can.
Or you can.
I actually wanted to touch on that. That it's interesting. Like, where I will give the team credit is that if you choose to main a certain hero, it feels like, well, it doesn't feel like, I can tell you that there are specific cutscenes or instances which I think are specifically tailored to that hero. Like, I've had villains saying to Barbara, like, oh, Barbara, like your dad would be X, Y, Z. I'm like, oh, like this is specifically for this hero. Her, it's not like generic flavor text of, Detective Gordon would be rolling in his grave. It's like, no, that's her father. Like, it's definitely speaking to her specifically. So,
Yes.
I mean, I haven't obviously played the game 4 times, but I imagine that there are specific instances of that where you could obviously mix and match heroes as you want, which is quite nice, is that as you level up, all heroes level up. It's not a thing of, oh, my Batgirl's level 10, but my Robin's level 1. Like, all of them will be level 10. So you can, pick up and play as you want. And I think that there's distinct dialogue, and I mean, not for every part of the game, but in certain parts there is unique flavor text for each hero, which is nice. Like, I give the team credit on that. That's really cool. And I mean, I think they had to record, dialogue,
a ton of dialogue
and stuff for 4 versions of the game, essentially. Which, that's really cool. But to answer your question, you can definitely mix and match on the fly. For what it's worth, I played a bit with everyone, and Batgirl, weirdly enough, unanimously from everyone I've spoken to, is the best to play. She just feels like a good balance of fast and damage. Red Hood, to me, I'm like, it's not fun just tapping triangle to shoot. It wasn't vibing with him.
There seems to be a real consensus that Red Hood is just done dirty in this game, and he just an awful character to play as. Bummer. Yeah. Listen, it's like you said, it's entirely unexpected. I think if you had been following this game, there was just something not right with it for a very long time. It's a bummer that we waited this long for a new Batman game, because it's been 7 years since Arkham Knight, and this is just super not it.
And to be clear, like, it's not a bad game. Like, it's not bad, but it's just not particularly good. So average is like the perfect description. I think some people are definitely going to get enjoyment out of it, because it is fun to explore Gotham and play as heroes. But just the way, like we've discussed, combat and how certain things work just doesn't feel good. The gear system, like, I don't know.
This is probably what people thought the Arkham series would have been before it came out, and it was just like ridiculously good.
But you know what? It's interesting, because I think if this game came out, if Arkham Knight came out and this game followed like 2 years later, let's say, for whatever reason, it might have been fun. It just feels like, by modern day standards, this feels dated.
Dated open world design.
It's just dated, dated open world design. Combat just isn't 100%. So modern day, like, it doesn't stand tall. But I think in some alternate reality where this followed as a sequel to Arkham Knight, I think it might have been a really good game.
I've seen some people say it's very PS3, Xbox 360 era type of open world design, which is like really damning. It's like, we've moved well beyond the sort of lifeless world checklist sort of shit on a map. Like, that's not what open worlds are anymore. Only the bad ones are like that. So bummer.
Well, there we go. That's Gotham Knights.
Not sure if I'll be playing much more of that.
I know. I did roll credit. So just last thing I'll say on it, I mainline the game. It took me about 12 to 14 hours, but there's a ton of side content. I know Darren, he threw out a number about 30 hours. So
I've seen a lot of that in some other reviews, like 30 hours to kind of like
there is side content to dive into. We have to do other cases, and in terms of content, it's there is a fair bit to get through if you choose to do so.
If that is your goal, I guess, is just content, then